All right, everyone. Now we're gonna go ahead and play around with some of the int, double, and string operations that we might be able to use. So I want to just start by mentioning that one of the best ways to learn about programming is to be curious and ask questions about things that you wonder about, and then to play around with them in the code to see what actually works. Right? There are infinite questions that you can ask about a programming language, which is one of the reasons that programming is such an amazing tool, because you can really do anything you want with programming if you can find the right method or the right libraries to do it. Okay, so enough of that. Let's go ahead and play around a little bit. So you'll notice that what I'm doing here is our standard creating a scanner. We'll call it scan. And this is something I like to do, especially, don't need parentheses here, in my early programs. I always like to start by creating a scanner, because a scanner basically allows me to interact with the program doing input and output, right? And that is going to give us a way to quickly test our program and see what's happening. So you'll notice that I create a new scanner here by passing in system.in. That basically says that I'm scanning whatever gets typed into the input window. You could also put other types of input here. You can read from a text file, you could read from a website or a database, okay? But for us, we're doing system.in because we're reading whatever the person types into the program. All right, so here I have created an int variable called x, and right now I set it to 20, but let's try something a little more interesting, where I'm actually going to use the next int method, which will, that's actually lowercase here, the next int method, which will read in an integer from the input window and then hopefully print it out and then multiply it times 7. You'll notice that I'm doing multiplication here with this little asterisk or the star symbol. And in the next lesson, you're going to learn all the different number calculations that you have in Java. But just for this demo, all you need to know is multiplication. And let's try this. So you'll notice that it says running my code, and then there's sort of a blank cursor here, blinking. That means it's waiting for me to type some kind of input. Let's try 20, and we do in fact get 20 printed out, and then 140 printed out next. Now, you may have noticed I sort of glossed over the fact that I first typed a capital N, and then I switched it to a lowercase. I don't remember exactly how the next int method is spelled. The reason that I knew it was lowercase is because Java has a convention that you always start a method name with a lowercase letter. And you always start a primitive data type name with a lowercase letter. This is a programming convention that is used to help programmers remember and work with each other's code. So you'll notice that the convention used for methods is lowercase letter to start, and then any words that come later on are going to be uppercase. Okay. So let's try this with the double. Instead of, let's see if we can do next double here. And I can try running my code. It's waiting for me again. So let's do 5.0. And we do get 5.0 printed out and 35.0. So you'll notice that x times 7, even though 7 is an int, when we multiplied it times a double, it turned our answer into a double. 35.0. Okay, you'll notice that that's always going to happen when you multiply or work with ints and doubles. It's going to default to giving you a double back because doubles require more space and we don't want to lose any information. Okay, so our last thing we can try is, instead of a double, let's read a string in. And once I read in my string x, I'm going to print it out and then multiply it times 7. Uh-oh, error. First type string, second type int. Binary operator multiplier, it's saying that there's an error, bad operand types. How did Java know that I was doing something wrong here? I hope that you said data type, right? Java looked and said, okay, x is a string and 7 is an int. How can we multiply a string times an int? Java says, no, you can't do that. And so it threw an error message. And this is why data types are really important. You will notice, however, that plus, if I add together a x plus x, it'll let me run my code. and if I say hello, it will actually add together two strings. But you'll notice it doesn't add them together like an arithmetic addition. It adds them together using string concatenation, which glues those two words together to give us a longer word. And I'll show you one last thing here, which is that if I do x plus 7, it actually does let me add, because that plus sign has two meanings. It has one meaning for ints and one meaning for strings. And when it sees that I'm adding together a string and an int, it just changes that int to a string and adds it on. All right, that's enough for ints, doubles, and strings. We are going to now look at one more primitive data type, the Boolean.